everybody's reacting to the Sargon of Akkad incident over at King's College in London, along with Yaron Brook, who is a big objectivist. That means he's one of these believers in Ayn Rand's philosophy. And what happened there was that Antifa disrupted it. So I want to bring a little contrast between that event, which was disrupted by Antifa, and the Jimmy Kimmel monologue at the Oscars, which I can't show the video because I would fear being copyright blocked. So I'm just going to include some audio and some imaging. But basically, I want to contrast the two events and talk about what's the real contradiction with Antifa and what would have been the real solution to having them as a phenomenon here in the U.S. and around the world. Indeed, this was in England. What would be the proper response to having groups do things like what they did to this event with Yaron Brook? So first, let's look at the Jimmy Kimmel clip over from the Oscars, or the audio from it.
This is history happening right here. Our friend Oscar is 90 years old tonight, which means he's probably at home right now watching Fox News. Of course, no, Oscar is here with us. After all the years, after all the awards given for achievements in show business, Oscar is still #1, no question about it. Oscar is the most beloved and respected man in Hollywood, and there's a very good reason why. Just look at him. Keeps his hands where you can see them, never says a rude word, and most importantly, no penis at all. He is literally a statue of limitations. And that's the kind of men we need more of in this town. Here's how clueless Hollywood is about women. We made a movie called What Women Want, and it starred Mel Gibson. Kind of all you need to know. The Academy, as you're no doubt aware, took action last year to expel Harvey Weinstein from their ranks. There were a lot of great nominees, but Harvey deserved it the most. And, oh, that's nice. That's very sweet. So, I'm sure he'll appreciate that applause. The Academy kicked him out, and after they did, I was curious, so I looked it up. You know, the only other person to be expelled from the Academy ever was a character actor named Carmine Corritti. In 2004, he was kicked out for sharing screeners. Carmine Corritti got the same punishment as Harvey Weinstein for giving his neighbor a copy of Seabiscuit on VHS. But what happened with Harvey and what's happening all over was long overdue. We can't let bad behavior slide anymore. The world is watching us. We need to set an example. And the truth is,
Okay, so you didn't see any of the video from it, but basically what he does is he goes up to the Oscar trophy and he makes fun of it. And, you know, these are jokes, so I'm not taking it 100% seriously, but he says, like, the goodness of it is that he doesn't have a dick and things like that. Kind of throws some shade at Harvey Weinstein. I call him Harvey Weinstein. A lot of people call him Harvey Weinstein. I don't care. but in any case, yeah, this guy is going for the low-hanging fruit. He also made the joke that the Oscar is 90 years old, so obviously he's watching Fox News. Well, by the same token, he's watching cable news. By the way, the average, I'll find the average age of a viewer for late-night television. Hold on. So this is from Showbuzz Daily. It's from 2016, so it might have changed. But at that time, so this is from July of 2016, and that was during the election. So you can imagine that there was pretty high ratings for a lot of these shows. Jimmy Kimmel actually had the worst demographics among youth. His highest audience was people who were 65 and over, women. And it would just trend downward from there. So people in the 21 to 24 age range, they were pretty low viewership. But, you know, Stephen Colbert also had terrible numbers with that. James Corden, you had, I think the best person for this was, ironically, Jimmy Fallon at the time. Seth Meyers also had some pretty awful numbers. I'll put a graphic up hopefully in a second, or while I'm editing this. So you can see that basically the these guys, they're really throwing shade at people that have nothing to do with what you're talking about. Stick to entertainment. Nobody cares about when they're trying to watch a movie award show, news networks or anything like that. By the way, I mean, they could have said equally the same thing about CNN, okay? According to TV Newser, the average age of a CNN viewer is 60. The average age of a Fox News and MSNBC viewer was 65. And Fox News' audience had actually gotten younger by 1 year. This is in 2018 published, but they're reviewing the 2017 numbers. So that age had Fox News' had gone down from 66, and MSNBC's had gone up from 63. So this was basically, in my opinion, it's a shot at one network, but in reality, you could say it about all three networks. CNN and MSNBC and Fox News are all talking to an audience that's gradually aging, and a lot of their opinions have probably been formed already, unless they're tuning into YouTube shows like this. So Jimmy Kimmel, he comes out, he doesn't take very many risks, okay? Then let's look at the Sargon of Akkad clip with Yaron Brook over at King's College.
You're fucking going to the Antifa. Fuck you! Fuck you! Don't fucking push me! Fuck you! Break it up! Get the fuck out! Who the fuck are you? Cunt! Now you've seen the fascists in action. They're like a fascist.
So why am I contrasting those two events, even though I couldn't have the video for Kimmel? Basically, this is the difference between Antifa's rhetoric and their action. If you look at the Oscar stage, you have a scripted presentation by Jimmy Kimmel or whoever would be, whatever year it is. Chris Rock, I think, presented 2 years ago. Who's hilarious, but given the context of the ceremony, it was the Oscars itself is the joke. Okay, you have all of these people who are sitting there ready to be praised by their peers, and it's basically the symbol of elitism. It's the symbol of worship of the elite. Okay, you have a gold statue on stage, basically the idol of the Hollywood glitterati, as some people would call them. I think they call them that in England. But in any case, that's really more of a fascist venue. More of a fascist venue. I'm not going to call them straight up fascists. Than Yaron Brook and Sargon of Akkad, who are sitting in in an auditorium in a college somewhere in London, and just discussing the idea of objectivism. And I wouldn't call myself an objectivist. I think a lot of my theological beliefs would conflict with it, but it's a system. It's a belief system that champions the individual and the self over everybody else. That's probably as unfascistic as it can get. If there's many problems you could find with objectivism. If you're somebody, for example, who is a Christian or who belongs to one of these more socially conscious religions, I don't know. You could let's say, for example, Buddhism. I don't know. Take your pick. Islam. The objectivism is not compatible with the majority of deistic religions, ones that believe in a God. It just is not, because objectivism says that people should look after their own interests, and that way you will have a society where people will not conflict with one another, and people can reach their maximum potential. And if not, then they just fail on their own, and we just let it be. It's the most let it be philosophy that there is, to the extreme. That's not fascism. I'm sorry. Fascism does require a lot of top-down command, a lot of prerogatives that come from a state authority. So the fact is that there's a couple things I want to talk about in this commentary. First of all, Jimmy Kimmel, people are talking about him, especially the Daily Caller, for example, but also Clay Travis, whose clip I'm going to feature in a second. They're talking about him. He made this metamorphosis from being this bro humor guy, who, by the way, used blackface, objectified women all the time, told dirty jokes, told jokes about, like, one of their my favorite clips from the Man Show was where they had a little kid selling beer at a lemonade stand. That telling jokes basically about juvenile delinquency and alcohol use. But it was a fantastic show. But now, because of Harvey Weinstein, because of all these people like Louis C.K., who he probably had met on a number of occasions, he's feeling the vulnerability. So that's the only reason he's speaking out against anything. It has nothing to do with wanting to be, socially conscious and helping other people. It's the same as with all of his other, gags where he pretend. They're not really gags. They're the crying monologues about gun violence and about Obamacare and whatever. Jimmy Kimmel has perfected the art of, the momentary lapse of comedy. He will take time out of his act in order to suddenly become basically, Ted Kennedy or Rosa Parks, whatever day it is. So here's Clay Travis's commentary from, talking about the Oscars and what's the problem with it.
I still can't get past Jimmy Kimmel becoming the voice of left-wing sort of morality. Am I crazy, or was Jimmy Kimmel the same guy who used to host the Man Show, dress up in blackface, sit around with a bunch of girls he called the Juggies in tight tank tops, and then take a break during the show so they could show girls jumping on trampolines? Now, I don't have a problem with any of that. In fact, I thought it was all pretty funny back in the day. But I'll be damned if I'm going to watch Jimmy Kimmel now lecture me on what American gun policy is going to be when the dude used to make a living walking around with a microphone, having Juggies fondle his dick and try to guess what he had inside of his pants. Am I the only person who watches Jimmy Kimmel now and thinks he's a pale approximation of as funny as he used to be, and also not the guy that I want to be the moral authority in America? I don't want him hosting the Oscars at a Me Too moment.
So who are we talking about there? Who the hell is Clay Travis? Clay Travis actually, he's a former, I think he did work for ESPN. And he's basically among the people that's gradually departed the network as it's become more political. And ironically, Travis is a long time, or at least probably until recently, he's a liberal, a Democrat. I saw on Dave Rubin, he had an interview with him where he talked about campaigning for John Kerry in 2004, voted for Obama twice, I believe. This is the archetype of one of these voters from Tennessee, from one of these heartland states of the U.S. that have become alienated by the identity politics of the past few years. So what's the big thing here? Why are the two connected? Well, you saw at the Sargon of Akkad appearance with Yaron Brook, you saw a bunch of of white Antifa people try to rush the stage unsuccessfully, get pretty much crowded out. Uh, by the way, they released smoke bombs and pulled the fire alarm and did a bunch of other stuff over there. They basically threatened an event with a bunch of people. Is that now in the wake of school shootings? Okay, granted, this was in London. They also didn't use any weapons, but or firearms, I should say. But we're talking about school safety, and if people aren't able to safely learn in a school environment, or in this case this was an extracurricular lecture by somebody invited by one of the societies at the school, then that's really the dawn of a fascist movement. Okay, a bunch of white masked figures. Their masks weren't white, but they were white people. You could see all of them. They come into the school. They tell people what to say. And now the funny part is that they lost their flag. This is actually done the opposite of what their intent was. It's magnified Sargon at a time when he's been battling a lot of negative reactions to his discussions with far right figures. He's been portrayed as being the loser in a number of debates with far right figures like Richard Spencer and who's that other guy? Jean-Francois, I think his name is. People have portrayed him as the ultimate cuck, and he's formed this liberalist movement, which people are calling kind of a joke. But now it's giving some validity to it, because if you saw the clip, and if you saw the people who interacted in the clip, unlike Richard Spencer, who just took a punch and really didn't do anything, maybe he was of the mind not to get into a violent incident because he didn't want to get arrested. Sargon and a lot of Sargon's fans, they did defend themselves. They did deflect the Antifa attack. And they basically left them, running away with their tails between their legs. And that's really the definition of someone who will stand up for their beliefs. And Sargon's views probably they match some of mine. So those that have to do with civil liberties and freedom of speech, I think we're basically of the same mind. That's why he has such a monumental audience around the world. That he's one of the first. I don't know if he was one of the first YouTubers, but he's definitely one of the main YouTubers that I've started to consistently watch, just to keep abreast of affairs that I might not be totally aware of, especially with regards to feminism and campus activities and issues of postmodernism. He's a fascinating guy. He's brought to light a lot of figures such as Jordan Peterson, and this is a guy who's shown that he's willing to defend his beliefs. Yaron Brook too. He didn't back down during that confrontation either. Neither did the students. Eventually, the school had to remove them. Now, this is where you get to the contrast. What's the difference here? You have these people. They had to get all these security assurances. If you watch some of the other videos from Brook and Sargon, whose real name is Carl Benjamin, they talked about all of the hoops they had to jump through with King's College of London in order to just get the event scheduled and approved by the school. And they had to basically ensure that there would be security there, and this type of thing happens even more frequently and to a more extreme degree in places like Berkeley. When Ben Shapiro comes, they have to pay these exorbitant security fees in order to get them on campus. That if you had a liberal speaker or a progressive speaker, that probably wouldn't happen, because you don't see, and to my knowledge, you don't see these people getting shouted down and deplatformed by conservative or non-liberal voices on the campuses. Usually, people from that side tend to not care if you have your little rally to support, unicorns and men with uteruses or whatever it is. That's the new thing today, men with uteruses. I think Planned Parenthood put out a tweet about that. They put out they do their events. Some people show up, and it disperses, but there's never any disruption. And the same thing with the Oscars. Again, an event where it's closed to the public, it's by invitation only, armed guards, even bomb sniffing dogs I saw at the red carpet. You need to they guard the Oscars as if it's Fort Knox, whereas schools don't get nearly the amount of security that people would have thought they would. And in this case, a university. So what would I say would have been the solution for what's going on at King's College? Because I'm not going to try to solve the problem with the Oscars. They fucked up the industry so much that, let them sink. They've already, I believe they lost 20% or so on their small audience from last year. So they've gone even further down from last year. But what about, colleges and schools and all that? Well, when you do things like vandalism and you do things like violent disruption and threats, so I think at the first step, people who threaten these gatherings, that's already a crime. Okay, so some of the people who might have done that and did not show up with these Antifa people, they should already be charged with a crime. Second of all, any people associated with that group that committed vandalism or threatened people or got into an altercation because they charged into the event, if they're associated with the school, whether as an employee or a student, they should be expelled or fired and possible. They should conduct an investigation and then submit the findings of the investigation to the prosecutor. And the basic premise of that is that the school, if they really take seriously their role in ensuring the safety and the freedom and the security of their students, then they wouldn't let crap like this happen. The 60s era of radicalism, there were a lot of cases like this of students occupying, especially at Columbia University, they would occupy administration buildings and whatever. And because of the the spirit of the times and the radical legal authorities and whatever, that was determined to be free speech and whatnot. Well, where has that gotten us? Those people have grown up to run these colleges, and now there is nothing but disorder at these events. So that people who are not administrators, people who just want to come to these lecture halls and have a discussion or a debate or maybe just a presentation, their physical safety can't be guaranteed because the school says, they pose a risk to the safety of the students because they want to discuss something. No, the people who pose a risk to the safety of the students are the people threatening the event. They're the people that are coming there and trying to abridge the rights of the people who have come there just to discuss their belief system on the grounds that they're fascists or whatever it may be. If this was a Muslim scholar coming to speak at the school, I think that under the same constitutional guarantees in the United States, they would be fine. There are Muslim students associations here in the U.S. You might not like it. I might not like it, but the fact is that they do have a constitutional right to discuss their beliefs in a school, provided that they comply with other aspects of the place. But what's going on here is that the schools themselves don't have the courage to give the proper response to intimidation. People have to be able to know that a university that is meant to broaden the intellectual and mental capabilities of their students. They're meant to add to them skills, knowledge, and maybe even a change of attitude. So these schools, they need to accept the fact that in order to do that, everybody must know that nobody can be deplatformed, apart from, let's say, child predators and people that may be inciting actual crimes. Those would be the exceptions. Okay, they can't be deplatformed. The people who do try to deplatform, if they're associated with the school in any way, they should be, tried, suspended, expelled, whatever the case, given academic penalties, whatever it has to be, because this is not an acceptable way to behave on, in an open society. It was only, I'd say, it was about 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, I was on a college campus. I was doing, my master's degree, which in retrospect was not that big of a deal. A lot of people do a postgraduate degree, but, let's be honest, the value of a college education is going down. I'm sorry to say that. And I remember it wasn't quite as bad as it is today, possibly because the election in 2016, which happened only a few months after I graduated, that really tipped it in the direction of a crisis on the national level. So suddenly the idea of freedom of speech has become cheap. The idea of respecting others' personal space has become cheap. The idea that the campus has some sort of social order has become cheap. I went to my campus last week. I went to a Gun Owners of America meeting. Very, very, nice talk with a number of students. Not all the students believed in Second Amendment too, or in gun rights, but nobody disrupted it. Luckily, probably because it was it was an off night, and my campus it never was a big hotbed for student activism. Although apparently in the past 2 years it has become more. I've seen video of it. But if this becomes the exception, where people can stand there and just talk about what they want and then go home, then we really are headed for a divided society, a society where there is no cohesion and where everybody fears their neighbor. So that's it for today. This is the For Real News with Ramon. Please subscribe, share the video. Like the video, check it out on BitChute if you haven't tried BitChute yet. I know you've already watched this video, but you might want to just check out BitChute anyway. Possibly Steam it coming up. And that's about it. Have a great rest of your day.